raced through this one. I mean, of necessity, this class is mostly a survey. We try and cover the basic stuff, in our introductory lesson of, basically the select, insert, update, and delete. We try and cover that, a little more slowly and in detail. But this last lesson is more of a quick survey of here are some more things to think about. The next lesson also, well, I mean, everything of necessity is a little bit of surface depth and, survey type stuff. But we're going to look at something a little different here. One of the things that's part of programming is building reports. So sometimes it'll be, just the manager, the boss says, hey, how is business unit X doing? How many sales did we have in the last week? A lot of times it will be more directly programming related in that it's, hey, we want a dashboard that shows these 17 things. And you need to write 17 different SQL queries to get those 17 things. So whether it's that or you go full on into like data science or analytics or something like that, asking reporting questions of a database and analytics is something that is part of most developers' jobs. So this particular lesson is going to use real world examples, unfortunately an extremely topical one still, of some COVID-19 statistics. We did this last Platoon and we were hoping that it would no longer be relevant when this one rolled around, but unfortunately it still is. So if we bring up the lesson.sql thing here, we've got the instructions on top. It ought to be fairly similar. We're going to change directory to the COVID-19 directory. We're going to create a database. We're going to import the data. And this data came from the magazine The Atlantic. They have an interesting site that has a whole bunch of aggregate data under an open license. And this is the particular one. They have a number of different tables, but we're just going to focus on just one table here. And I imported this last night. If we bring up this page here, this data definitions, there's actually a lot of stuff here, so I don't necessarily recommend reading it all, but if we're curious about what any particular column means, this tells us a lot about it. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here. So let's see, how many pages is this anyway? Like 1, 2. So there's 13 pages just to explain in exacting detail what do they mean by the different bits of data. So let's look around. Let's take a couple minutes here. We'll say maybe let's take 4 minutes here. We'll go till 2:10, and let's look around both at that site a little bit for what does the data mean, and in particular, let's look at the database here. We have one table. It's called All States History. So let's use \D in All States History, and we can see. These are
I can't see what you're doing.
Oh, is my screen not shared? Oh,
You're still on the website.
What? Huh.
And we just see browser.
Yeah, it looks like it's frozen.
Oh, yeah, because that's not even over there anymore. Let me, any luck now?
No, same thing.
Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing and just like restart the share, I guess. Is it back?
Looks like it's loading.
It's loading.
Oh, that's weird. Well, I guess what I was typing there is \D and then that all states history, which you can tab complete to, and it just gives you the list of all the fields. See, maybe I'll drop off the call and come back. I guess maybe that'll fix it.
Let me just try sharing my screen real quick and see if you guys can see mine, just for no particular reason.
Yep.
You can? All right, so I'll stop. And then maybe you could just try one more time.
Yeah, okay. Still no good? Huh. Okay, I'll hang up and dial back in and we'll see if maybe that fixes it.
I don't know if anyone, maybe Jake, if you're there, I don't know, would you mind giving a share a try?
Sure.
Yeah, yours works.
Yeah, we'll see what Jack can do when he reconnects.
Yeah.
I see a terminal.
Yeah, works.
Cool. So you said the terminal. You mean, is it VS Code or?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I've got a bunch of monitors here and one of them does just have a terminal on it. So get a little concerned there for a second. Okay, so yeah, let's just look around a little bit here. We looked at the data definitions. We look at all these different fields that we have available. Maybe do a select star on that table just to look around. So this data is the format of this data is interesting in that it's kind of a running total, as in we can see for particular days, what the total number for a given state is. So let's start by saying, like, how many cases have there been in the US? And we can see by adding all those up, and again, we have to go back and forth between the data definition that they gave us on that website and looking at this table structure to see what these things mean. But the column positive is how many positive tests were there.
I think your screen might have frozen again.
Oh no.
Or can you scroll down to the bottom of your terminal?
Is it moving?
Your VS Code terminal is the P-SQL terminal, and VS Code's not moving. Well, I can see the top results of your table that you previously ran before. Whatever you just ran before that was showing the whole time. Nothing has moved since then.
Huh. Boy, this is really frustrating. Hey, Jake, you want to maybe like tag team this? I don't know what's going on with why I'm not able to share, but maybe if you can have this on your screen and we can kind of tag team a little bit on this.
Sure. Yeah, let me get that set up.
What
I
did
wonder
you
if
type in to get that list?
Oh, which one?
The one that you were trying to show us, what did you type in? I feel like I missed that part.
So the last thing I was trying to do was just get the total number of cases in the US. And that was on line 30 of lesson.sql. We were running that query.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me actually run the commands to have this locally, because I have not done that. COVID-19. We want to import this lesson file.
Yeah, wrong directory though. You'll need to go to the other directory.
Okay. And then let's connect. Try to bump this up a little bit. All right, we are in the database.
Woohoo. So yeah, let's run that query on line 30 and see what we get out of there.
I'm gonna copy and paste.
All right,
Okay,
so,
got a big number.
yeah, 27 million, and that's just confirmed cases. So if we wanted to find out a few more things here in exercise 1, let's look and see if we can figure out how many total deaths there have been and how many total tests have been performed. So here's an interesting example of how the database will basically always give us it'll basically always answer our questions, but it's very easy to ask the wrong question. And it's very important to be kind of like skeptical of when you ask it a question, look at the number carefully and see if this is the right answer. So I guess I'll just kind of paste my queries into our chat, the Zoom chat thing here.
Yeah, go for it.
And y'all can run these and see what answers you get. So this was actually what I wrote first, just off the top of my head here. So I wrote this, okay, select sum, we'll sum the column death from all states history, and let's see what we get.
Yeah, Jack, tell us what's the type coercion here? Why do you add that?
So the reason for that, it's actually unnecessary in this particular query. It'll be necessary in the next one, but by default, since it's summing an integer column, it's going to be an integer that comes out, and we're going to divide it, and we want fractions in a minute. But that was actually kind of my bad. I adapted it from our next query. Probably could have just gotten rid of that. But let's run this and see, like, what is our number that comes out here? So we wrote a valid query. It gave us an answer. But when we look at that answer, our common sense has to kick in and say, wait a second. There have not been 66 million deaths. We must have made a mistake somehow. So if we look at this data, like for example, if we were to just do a select star from all states history, we can look at the structure of the data a little bit. And what we would see is we have a record for each day and for each row. Oh, wow. Well, speaking of those skulls.
Yeah. Well, my font's kind of bumped up to try to make it readable for everyone.
Would that be maybe like X \x auto, I think would probably help
Okay.
that a little bit. Or, yeah, \x. You'll need to break out of that one, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I can try to, if this is a structure, is there something about the table you'd like to see?
I just was, sometimes I find it useful when I'm doing analytics just to browse. And
Yeah,
kinda
let's do
notice,
it.
like, what do I notice here? So to me, the things that really jump out are date and state, that we have a row for each one of those. And it talks about all these things are, like totals. There's a lot of totals. And if, by adding them all together, we're actually not getting the number we want. If we want the total, we need to filter this to just, February 21st is the latest results we have. And instead of saying add up the total from February 21st for all the states, we were saying add the total for every day. And obviously that's entirely wrong. Now, I seem to remember hearing on the news that in the last few days, it hit like 500,000. So that gives us a cue. Obviously, we made a mistake with our query here. So let's go back to that query and let's add, where date equals, 2021-02-21. And if we run that, we'll see just the rows from that day. And then if we plug that back into that select sum, then we will see a number that looks more like what we heard on the news. That kind of gives us a little validation of if this was right or not.
Death.
Yeah, so this data is a few days delayed, but that looks about accurate. So that makes me think that we probably did, write that query right. We could do the same thing for, how many tests have been performed. And we have that, that solution also in the solutions.sql. And when I run that, I see that there have been, wow, that is a lot of tests. So like over 300 million tests, I guess it is now. Yeah. So let's take a look then at, what is the overall case fatality rate? So this lets us, we're just going to divide the total number of deaths by the total number of positive tests. And let's see what we get. So Jake, that one is back on the lesson SQL. Probably why you're not seeing it there, yeah.
Nice.
So then this is another place where we want to say, okay, we got an answer, 1.75%. But then again, we think, wait a second, I've listened to the news and that number doesn't quite seem right. So what's going on? So why is this number so high? Well, the question we are actually asking is, what is the rate relative to people that were definitely diagnosed with it? So we're missing all the asymptomatic cases or cases that were mild enough that people just didn't go to the doctor. So this is another case of we asked a question, and we even in a sense asked the right question, but the answer was perhaps a little bit misleading. So another question here that we can ask the database, and this was, especially big news, a few months ago. It hasn't been in the news so much lately, but how many ventilators are in use? And in particular, we can ask, like, how about this? We'll say, what day was the most ventilators in use and how many were there? Now, I found this answer actually rather surprising because that hasn't been in the news for months. But according to this data from the Atlantic, New Year's Eve actually was the worst day, like over 8,000 people on ventilators. Now, you'll notice a little bit of new syntax there as well. We had the group by one, order by two. That is a new thing. So in both of those cases, this is a way of just saving us a little typing. So when we say group by one, we are telling it group by column one, or in other words, group by date. And when we say order by two, we are telling it order by that sum on ventilator currently, that whole expression. And this is both much shorter, and it makes sure that if we're sorting by something, we're not duplicating the same logic and perhaps like mistyping it where we're doing one thing in one place and one thing else, slightly different somewhere else. Now the null's last part, we talked about how null, it doesn't really make sense to say, is something equal to something that's unknown? Well, it also doesn't make sense to say, is 5 greater than an unknown value? Well, we don't know, it's unknown. So nulls, we can basically just choose, should the nulls come at the beginning or should the nulls come at the end? And since we want the largest number, we want to make sure the nulls come at the end because, null, it means unknown.
That's to address the problem you talked about earlier, Jack, right? Like you comparing a number to null is doesn't make like logical sense. So that's
Right.
just a way of like telling SQL what to do with the nulls.
Yep. So we've got a bunch of exercises here, and they all are similar. In fact, most of these things, it's just a matter of finding the right column and changing the column that we're summing. There might be a few other things here, but let's take, we got 4 examples here. So let's take about 5 minutes here. And, again, we have the solution. So if you really need to look at the solution, but try and figure out these exercises on your own. And then we'll talk about them in about 5 minutes and then go on from there.
That for the workshops or not, or if y'all were doing that in the beginning.
All right, I was recording. I forgot to restart.
Cool. Okay, so we good to go now?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Cool. Okay, so I guess the last thing to discuss here, window functions, lateral functions, those are interesting advanced features if you want to look up. I think we may have used them in some of the other lessons in like the advanced. There's some of the exercises that are marked as like bonus or like really hard, and they're just kind of extra things you can look at. But the point of this lesson was severalfold. One is basically this idea of your data model needs to be designed such that you can answer the questions. You need to think about which questions you're going to ask first. And the second is when you are writing queries, writing reports, asking questions, is that it is really, really hard to actually get the right answer. And I mean, you know, and this is not having, you know, some sort of, you know, trying to make it look good for the boss, you know, trying to tilt the numbers, or, you know, it being something political where, you know, people are trying to twist the statistics or something. With the absolute best of intentions, it is very, very easy to make a mistake and get totally wrong answers. So I think one of the things to draw from this is a healthy sense of even just like self-skepticism when you write a query, to double and triple check and make sure, okay, did this thing really get the answer that I think it was going to get? And that's a very important skill to have when you're writing SQL stuff, because it can easily give you an answer and that can be the wrong answer. We got a couple minutes before our next break. Do we have any questions on this? Cool. Well, why don't we break till 3, and then Jake will come back and lead us through a data modeling exercise.